Time. You know we can't escape it. And wouldn't it be nice to actually control time? I mean, not feel like you've lost weeks, months, even years in the drop of a hat? Or even like being in a loop where you could control time and endless time at that. You'd never age. You'd stay young forever. And in fact, in the movie I'll be talking about today, one of the characters can actually control time, plus a whole host of other powers that a whole bunch of characters can do. Netflix Nights, number 28, where I'll be talking about Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. But before we do, let's see what the good folks over at Netflix have for Synopsis for us today, shall we? After Jacob Portman unearths a cache of his grandfather's old photos, curiosity about them leads the teen to a dilapidated former orphanage where he discovers a group of children who are not only peculiar but also possess extraordinary powers. Rated PG-13 and from 2016. And the interesting thing about this movie right off the bat is it is a film that's based off of a book. I believe the book series has like 3 or 4 books attached to it. And with some films, they lean closer to the book. Others tend to veer a little bit more from the material. And we'll get into where this film sort of lands. But right off the bat, the film is about a young kid in his sort of late teens who has a real connection with his grandfather, and when his grandfather ends up dying of a mysterious death, he is looking for answers. And he remembers back in the day that his grandfather used to tell him these tall tales of these people with extraordinary powers and the fact of wanting to find them and explore. And this teen realizes that if he wants to get answers to the mysterious death of his grandfather, that he needs to go on a journey to find these people, and that's what he does. And he meets up with these children who have very peculiar powers, and the stories behind them and the stories about why they're hiding, and basically wants to be friends with them and wants to protect them, and the story that goes with that. And you know what? I think that the movie is actually a really solid movie. I think it's pretty enjoyable, to be honest with you. And I think the cast here is also really good as well here. You have Eva Green, you have Samuel Jackson, you have Asa Butterfield, you have Terrence Stamp, Rupert Everett. You have a ton of people in this movie, and I think they all do a pretty good job here. Eva Green plays Miss Peregrine, and she does a great job in this role. She really plays up the more sort of matriarchal aspects of the character and the sort of quirks that this character has. And Eva Green, honestly, I like her in some things and I don't like her in others. Like, for instance, I love her in Casino Royale, and I hate her in a movie like Sin City: A Dame to Kill For. So for me, she's an actress who I think if she gets the right project, she can really shine. And this is one I think that's really suited for her. She picks a balance of you're not playing it too over the top, quirky, just playing it enough where you like her and you're curious about her and she's playful, but it's not too over the top. She actually does a really good job with that role. And you also have Samuel Jackson playing the villain I believe, called Mr. Barron. And he's actually an amalgamation of about 3 different villains from the book. And I thought Samuel Jackson did a really solid job in it. I really did. I think he is playing it a little campy. I think he is playing it a little over the top. But I kind of feel he needs to. You know what I mean? I think that he needs to play it that way. If he were to play it really super dark and super serious, I don't think it would work in this movie. I think that playing it with a tone of a little bit more camp, I think served it well. And he's definitely having a lot of fun with the role. You can see it in the movie. He definitely is enjoying playing the character. And I think that he's a pretty effective villain for what the movie is asking him to do. I think Asa Butterfield, who plays the lead in this, the young teen, actually does a really good job as well. I originally saw him in Ender's Game, and I thought he was great in Ender's Game, and I think he's really great here as well. I think he's a really cool, like, up-and-coming actor, and I hope he does more projects. I thought he was a very solid lead in this, very believable. I thought all the actors, up and down, I thought they were fantastic. Really well done, and I thought they served their purpose really good. And I do have to admit, I thought all the sort of children in the movie, all their powers and everything, was really cool. You got things like characters able to float, control time, as I said earlier. That they can project their dreams. You have people who can bring the dead back to life. You have kids who are extremely strong and can lift like the most heaviest of objects. Others who can actually grow the earth, like, food and trees and the land. I mean, just a variety of things that these kids can do, and it's very fascinating to see these powers on screen, and it's actually really cool to watch it. I have to admit, I had fun with it. I really did. I will admit this, that I do feel like the movie sometimes, not a lot, I think it relies a little bit too heavily at times on CGI, especially there's these creatures that are the villains. They're very, they almost look like the Slender Man, to be honest with you. They almost look like the Slender Man with these razor sharp teeth, very like long fingers and long arms, and very like imposing figures. And sometimes the CGI works and sometimes it doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't always work to its benefit. I think that's another thing. I think some of it was actually really well done, and they did do a lot of practical effects in the movie, which I think that was probably the best way to go with this. I think the CGI at times is a little wonky. It's not terrible, but you sort of feel like how much stuff they got actually in camera. It would have been nice had they tried maybe doing something a little bit more unique with it. But unfortunately nowadays, that technology, even like sort of rod puppets and sort of building a huge suit, really doesn't benefit movies nowadays. I think you have to go with CGI, so I can't really fault the movie completely. But again, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And to that end, this movie is directed by Tim Burton. Now, I do have to admit, look, I am an old school Tim Burton fan. I love a ton of his movies, whether we're talking about Pee-wee's Big Adventure, Ed Wood, Edward Scissorhands, Beetlejuice, Mars Attacks. I mean, there's a huge list. I could go on and on and on. He's a fantastic director, but I feel like in recent years, I haven't been as big of a fan of Tim Burton, and I feel he's been more miss than hit. Alice in Wonderland, I really didn't care for. Dark Shadows, not all that great. And there's been a lot of things that he's done that I sort of scratch my head of why he was even involved in it. The Planet of the Apes remake. Okay, I mean, stuff like that baffles me. I do have to admit, I think with this movie, I think that Tim Burton is probably the closest to being old school Tim Burton that I've seen from him in a long while. Really. And sometimes you still get some of the bad Tim Burton tendencies that you've recently got from him, but I think honestly this book and the material suited him perfectly. And I just thought, like, wow, the whole thing of these weird characters and the design of the creatures and the look of the kids and the mansion and everything like that, I felt like, honestly, it was right down his alley. I thought the look of it was really fantastic. I thought he really had a handle on how he wanted the actors to create their characters and how he wanted this world to be. You could really tell that he was more involved in this. I felt that he cared more. It's hard to say whether a director really, doesn't care about material that he's doing, but you can really see when material suits a director, you can see it because the movie is just, you feel that as a director they're more engaged in the material. You can just feel it on screen. And Tim Burton just was far more engaged in this material, and it actually worked a hell of a lot for me in it. I also have to admit that, this movie, does it set up for a sequel? Yes, it kind of does. But honestly, it also ends at a point where you could just end it here and you'd be fine with it too. It doesn't feel like it's sort of sequel bait too much. And that's a good thing because a lot of these sort of books tend to lean towards wanting to set up a sequel too much. And then you're like, wait a minute. Like, let's slow down the horses here. Let's see if this movie makes money before you go into sequel territory. And I know this movie didn't do fantastic at the box office. It did okay. I don't think we're ever going to get a sequel to this movie. I don't think we're ever going to get, a part two. But honestly, I don't think we need a part two. I think that this movie actually was really well done, and I thought it really worked. I liked seeing even like the time loop stuff where most of the movie takes place in 1943, where there's this time loop before the Germans invaded, and the whole loop from night to day and the whole time switch and everything is very cool. I love the quirks of the characters. I really enjoyed the world that I was watching. Honestly, to me, it is a recommend for you guys. If you're an old school Tim Burton fan like I am, and somebody who has felt like Tim Burton has kind of failed in the last few things he's done, and you kind of feel like Tim Burton is going off the rails a little bit, watch this movie. And I think you're going to find that Tim Burton still has it. He's just got to find the right material in order to suit him. But once he has that, I think he can make movies that are really still fantastic to watch and movies that are worth your time. I mean, I'll take this movie 10 times over Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Me personally, that movie was a nightmare. This movie actually felt much more towards the sensibilities that I think Tim Burton used to do. I think if he finds more material like this, I'm up for whatever he does next. So, those are my thoughts on Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, Netflix Nice number 28. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And if you did, definitely give it a thumbs up. And if you're new to the channel, welcome. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and definitely check out the other content on the channel. The movie reviews, the Blu-ray DVD out and about videos, the Blu-ray pickups, even more of the Netflix nights here. If you enjoy them, hit subscribe and you will get more of it. Also, I am on Twitter and Facebook, FilmFan108, so you can check me out there as well. And boy, would I love to control time. Never enough in one day, folks. Yeah. If only. I'd love to have that superpower. Alright, guys. I will see you next time for another Netflix Nights. Take care.